What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show bringing you all the action from the Premier League and Serie A, England and Italy. I am your host, Matt, joined by my co-host, Dom. Dom, how are you?
Feeling great. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to Underground Sports, the network.
I didn't know who you were wishing happy birthday to at first.
Yeah, just so many months early for you, dude.
Well, everybody's got a birthday. To all the birthdays, both sides, all of them.
Yes, happy anniversary. The Underground Sports Philadelphia network. I know you guys talked about this obviously on the main pod, but I didn't get to talk about it yet. So
yeah. Well,
yeah. How long was it till we did the first ever original episode of Top Bins, like on the couch together?
I want to say it was that like spring must have been because that was all within like the start of that. So yeah, I'd say our anniversary is probably like would be this March, maybe April.
I forget how soon after we added in some of the spinoffs. It
was definitely touched on Barnes' couch, and that was very early on in the podcast experience. So that was when we just covered everything too. We're just like, we'll just talk about all of it, and boy, was that not easy. Even with England and Italy, it can get a little much sometimes. So I'm glad we railed it in because I was not trying to talk about Dortmund and Stuttgart and.
Yeah, we talk about we mentioned the major stories that come out of those other countries.
Right. Well, let's start in England. Major story over the weekend. Really, both leagues had two big games with title implications. So Arsenal, it felt like they had fallen off a little bit. Turned around form in some ways and kind of re-entered the title race conversation. Like a 3-1 win at home over Liverpool. Big win for Arsenal. Obviously, they have done this a few times this season. Obviously, did to City as well, where they're able to kind of get a positive result in a fixture that they haven't always gotten them. And it felt like a good reminder of what Arsenal can be on a good day. Very sloppy game, I'll say. Both teams with errors and mistakes. Obviously, there's some like VAR stuff and referee stuff and decisions in this game that I don't really feel like litigating, to be totally honest, because what's the point? But on the Liverpool perspective, right, from my perspective at least, tons of injuries still, and it felt like they were riding a really positive wave over the last few weeks and felt at times maybe a little unsustainable. A lot of things went wrong in this game, but I also think this is maybe we're a little due for a loss like this in some ways. And like I said, for Arsenal, I think the biggest thing is, they're being talked about as actual title challengers again. It felt like we had lost them as part of that conversation, that it might have gotten whittled down to just Manchester City and Liverpool, but a good reminder of what Arsenal can be on their day.
Mm-hmm. It's a little resurgence if you have it. I mean, I've seen some people online talking about some of these other players, that kind of push to the wayside and are actually like some serious players like Gabriel. I mean, he's been very good for Arsenal recently. And not to mention that I think they have one of the best, winger duos in the league, in my opinion. Top 3 for sure. So they're always quality.
Saka's doing a lot of heavy lifting on that.
They both scored. Each of them scored. Okay, what do you mean?
Martinelli is not had a good season. It is not on. He's a tier, maybe even several below Bukayo Saka. I'm not gonna.
Well, I'm not saying he's of the same level. He's got 5 goals and 2 assists this year.
That's not bad. Come on, we're in February.
Hey, let me waffle. Dude. All right, come on now.
I'll
Hey.
let you. I
Saka
always
has
let you
8
off.
goals. Saka has 8 goals. Martinelli just has 3 less. Okay, so
Quick maths. That's really
quick
good from you.
math. Quick
What's
math.
the assist ratio looking like? 'Cause I know Saka's one of the better
7
assisters.
7-2.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. There's the goal and assist contributions. I was looking for.
Yeah,
Just double his goal contributions. It's fine. He's certainly not
it is
carrying
what it is.
the two.
I mean, for you guys, all that it really does is, let this gap close a little bit. Now it's a 2-point gap with City and Arsenal, and it makes the title race a little bit hotter. But you've got Burnley coming up next, right? So Liverpool should bounce back pretty nice. Arsenal have West Ham, so they've got a strong inner city derby coming up. So who knows? They're on a 3-game win streak. This is one of those games where anything can really happen. West Ham having a better season this year, so they're looking to turn around their form as well. 3 draws and a loss in their last 5. So this could be that type of game that kind of fires them up and pushes them through and kind of changes momentum. So it's not going to be an easy game for Arsenal, especially when their backs are against the wall and trying to stay in this title race. Tied with City on points. City play Everton, so you can expect a win there. So it's getting hot. And if Liverpool get a win too, Arsenal can easily fall out of this.
Yeah. City still have a game in hand as well, which is important to mention.
That's a very good point.
Brentford game because of the Club World Cup. Champions League is back next week. So,
yes.
With a lot of this stuff, you have to keep in mind that, teams like Arsenal and City do have to focus on that. Although I don't know if they play next week or the week after. So like the staggered matches here, and Liverpool don't have to play in this first part of the Europa League. So that's something to consider. When you're talking about some of the fixtures, is you have to think about rotation a little bit more. That was, I think, an issue for Arsenal. I think definitely, with some of the fatigue and the amount of minutes played, there was a very real conversation about how Saka had maybe been overplayed this season. Conveniently, when he starts to play a little bit better, those discussions fall away a little bit.
The Arsenal media for you.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, people were talking about that. Anytime there's a young England star, there's a habit, I think, of praising and then tearing down, in a kind of vicious cycle. But yeah, for me, it's still Manchester City as my favorites for the title. It's been that way all season. It's been that way from the preseason. And it just feels like, we're entering the time of the year when we do start to see them really lock it in. We talked about Kevin De Bruyne being back and how pivotal that's going to be. You got Erling Haaland back healthy, Phil Foden kind of rounding into form. This is the time of the year that we've seen Manchester City lock in the title. And Liverpool have to get healthy still. They still have a lot of guys out. Salah, no clear timetable on when he'll be returning. As long as he's out, that's a huge loss. I think it's a huge credit that Liverpool have done as well as they've done over the last month without him. The fact that you missed Trent for a large stretch of there, it's been tough. It's very tough, and Szoboszlai as well. It's just been all across the board. Not making excuses, but that is the reality of the situation. Is that I think they've done a very impressive thing of staying in the title race despite the injuries that I had. Because I think if you give me truth serum in early January, I don't know that I would have had us still top of the table in mid-February. But
I'll say this: Darwin has been very pivotal for you guys.
He always has been. People hate on him.
Very pivotal.
He's not the most clinical, obviously, but he is. He did hit 4 posts in one game. I recognize that as being absurd, but that is who he is. He's just a chaos magnet, and that's
14 goal contributions, man. 7 and 7. It's nice.
Yeah, people have been weird about him in some ways in the way they've talked about him, but he's honestly, I think he's been great. And again, if he's someone that can start to really zero in some of these chances, he's someone that can get you 30 goals this season. And I'm really excited by that prospect. Speaking about the opposite of excitement, dread, anguish, pain, gotta have a real talk about Pochettino now, because there's been rumors. Now I think these are more rumors than anything, but Jose Mourinho's out of a job. There's been a lot of talk
Stop
about Pochettino.
Stop.
maybe being gone as Chelsea manager because it has not gone well this season. Mourinho taking over, I think
Stop.
would be hilarious. And it's almost like multiplying a negative by a negative, where you got to get a positive out of that, right? Like you take a really toxic situation, you put in a toxic person, and the outcome I think has to be positive, right? I now you're the math guy, so you tell me if I'm making a misstep here in my
Repeat yourself
calculation.
again.
A negative times a negative is a positive, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's maybe
Oh my God. Yo, put Mourinho in charge of this team. Bro, he's stuck. He will not want to play some of these guys. He's gonna want to buy players. They can't buy players because they can't sell these players. Like Enzo wants out. They can't sell Enzo because he's locked in on an 8-year contract. No team's gonna want to pick that up. Like it's I just don't see a world where Mourinho comes and does anything different with this team. So it's only going to be for the memes. We're going to get some quality clips of angry Mo, which is always funny, running down the touchline, yelling at the ref, talking to his coach, and then running onto the field, like classic Mo. But we're not like he is so past his time now, man. Just
probably, but it would be really fun. Comparing Pochettino to the last Chelsea manager, Graham Potter. Graham Potter had 1.27 points per game, which was not great. That was not a good level. Really, you want to be around the 2 mark. That's typically going to have you like competing for European places. Going to have you competing for Champions League spots. Graham Potter was, I think, largely seen as someone that did fail at Chelsea, or at least it never really got going. Pochettino's not been doing much better, though. He's at 1.35 points per game so far, and that's out of 23 games. Graham Potter's was out of 22. So it's been a marginal improvement. The fact that you really have not seen a big shift. I think he's only earned 3 more points than Potter did at this stage.
Has Poch ever been like an elite coach?
Elite, no. Good, yes. He was never elite. Elite to me. So elite, and it's like true.
Didn't he lose the league with PSG?
He did, yeah. But that was a crazy. Was that the Lille year?
That was the year that Lille won, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there was that.
Saying.
Pochettino was always a good manager. Yeah, he was in my mind never elite. Like elite to me is like you're one of the 3 best managers, I would say.
I wouldn't even have him in that B tier.
I think he was when he left the Spurs job. He was in that second tier of manager. I think it was fair to say that what he had accomplished there, and the fact that he was young, that he could take on, and even what he had done at Southampton in the limited time there. Like I do think it was fair to say that he's probably a tier below that now, though. Honestly, he's probably in that 3rd tier of manager where. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to say here too, right? Because Potter, I think, was a good manager. There's something about Chelsea, and I think in the setup here that isn't working. The fact that you have so many players to configure and change and shift and manage. It hasn't helped too that they've had some injuries. It doesn't help that Thiago Silva's wife is tweeting what she would do if she was Chelsea manager from the sidelines. That's never helpful.
Just pulling out Al Horford.
So look at, if we're looking at this is the most starting 11 changes in the Premier League this season. Brighton at 86. That's been a deserving thing, but also some injury-driven stuff. They've had a lot of injuries, a lot of like season-ending injuries at Brighton. Nottingham Forest, who struggle with injuries, but also have a ton of turnover in their squad. Liverpool, who have also had a lot of injuries this year. Sheffield United, Manchester City, who have obviously a ton of depth. And Chelsea, in descending order of changes. So Chelsea have changed the squad around a lot. And again, they have had injuries. They have had those problems. But it doesn't feel like, and it was the same with Potter, that they never really felt with Potter that this team ever figured out what formation they want to play. Really like stuck with a style and with a, kind of a, could you name a Graham Potter starting 11, a typical starting 11? No. And there wasn't one. And it's kind of felt the same with Pochettino. It just feels like a a ship that's going in circles at the moment and really, really lacking in direction. And I don't know that Pochettino is going to be fired because I don't know that they want to pay, pay out his contract and what a pain that might be. But I do think it's been a season without much signs of progress, and I think that has to be very frustrating.
Yeah.
Looking at some transfer stuff, a lot of loans. We'll talk about those with Italy as well. No real like permanent transfers from the January window this year. No, there's very rarely like a huge January transfer guy. There's normally at least one person who's like disgruntled and finally gets their move, but none of that this season. So I just picked 3 from the Premier League that were interesting to me. Armando Broja goes to Fulham on loan from Chelsea. This is a guy that was linked away with moves over the last few seasons, has had some success in the Premier League, limited success, I would say. Interesting move for Fulham. They also moved on Carlos Vinicius from Fulham, so he's kind of a Vinicius replacement. So he's going to be slotting in, trying to compete with Jimenez and give them minutes. Fulham, they're not at risk to me in my mind for like relegation this year. I think they're probably going to be safe. But it's an interesting move for Broja and trying to, I think, reestablish himself because we just talked about Chelsea and how many players they have and how hard it is to break through there. Gio Reyna to Nottingham Forest on loan. Americans unite. It would have been great if he went to Fulham and we could really recreate full America with him and Anthony Robinson. But it is interesting, Gio Reyna, he's never really been someone that I think has like established himself as like a starter. He's been like one of these super sub guys. He's never been someone that's giving like a full 90 and giving you like complete performances, but there is like talent there. There's very clearly talent there. So I am curious to see how he does there. But Nottingham Forest is not a great situation, I have to say.
I mean, it's weird, but I think it's kind of on brand. And I think it kind of shows like what his stock in world football really is. When the World Cup was going on and, he was getting snubbed and, the U.S. fans were kind of like divided, right? Like, oh, Gio should be starting. Oh, no, Gio's not good enough, this and that. I think this is basically like pretty evident. Like, Noah, he's kind of fallen out of favor at Dortmund. Now he's going to a very low tier Prem team. Like, obviously, like you said, talent is still there.
There was off the field stuff.
There's other stuff on top of it.
Parents were blackmailing the coach. That there was that.
So what's going to happen here if at Nottingham Forest if something doesn't go right?
Well, I don't know that they have dirt on the manager in the way that they did on Greg Berhalter. I think that might be the key difference.
Gio's parents are just the everyday. Why isn't my kid starting on varsity type parent? Like, Coach, let me talk to you after this game about my son's playing time. Like,
very much in that mold. This one, speaking of playing time, Calvin Phillips to West Ham on loan from Manchester City. Just a guy that I can remember us talking about his move and being perplexed about the decision. Didn't really feel like a pet player. Turns out he wasn't. It was very much like a club-motivated decision, and he's just never really fit at Manchester City. This is the Euros are this summer, and I need to be playing regularly type of decision, I think. So it's a good move for him in that sense. West Ham, finally someone told them that they can sign a midfielder that isn't like a 10. So that's good. I think it's great that they finally learned that there are guys out there that can actually put in a tackle because all the midfielders that they've signed for the last like 5 years pretty much have been
they always had Declan Rice, so they never had to really worry about it until recently.
Sure, but I think again, you go through the list and it's like, brother, you did not need Pablo Fornals, who's going off to Real Betis now. So that's catching you up with England there. We'll hop over to Italy. Inter beat Juventus, top of the table clash. Not the most exciting game I've ever seen. And, whenever you have an own goal, it's kind of the decider. It kind of feels
me so much.
It kind of feels like you're taking something away. But, Inter extend their lead at the top of the table. It's a huge advantage, obviously, just in terms of the math. But I think especially as well, too, in momentum, where it places them as they, look to secure this title. We talked a lot about, like, Juventus and that it's felt in some ways maybe a little unsustainable, some of the ways that they've been winning. And you've maybe seen them fall away from that, a few times, and that winning 1-0 or winning, by these 1 goal margins is not the most replicable way. And Inter have just felt like the best team. Inter, by the way, too, only 10 goals allowed so far this season. So not only are they the best attacking team in Italy, they've really, really limited opposing teams' chances, and have just been, for me, they've been the best team in Italy. This game was representative of that in a lot of ways, and I'm not saying they're walking towards the title because there's so much time left, but I think they do have a game in hand as well, so they can further extend this lead. And I think as we get close, once you start getting into March, is where I think the title race really becomes a factor, right, in games, and you can feel it in the moments. So with every match week, I think you start to build up momentum, and they do have Roma next. Roma have been in a little bit of an upswing since firing Mourinho. They've won 3 straight. Part of that has been some of their opponents they played, but an interesting test after a big kind of, I think, emotional win over Juventus, to have to play a Roma team, which all of a sudden has kind of figured itself out and is in a little bit of good form now.
They beat the bottom 4 table.
I did your
now.
qualifier. I did your qualifier. Don't worry.
Come on now. Look, I will say this. I personally think that Allegri has lost it. He doesn't have that it factor. Like you said, it's very tough to continuously replicate these 1-0 wins and hanging on for dear life. And I mean, he's going against
the table.
He's going against his morals this year, dude. Like, he's playing young players.
For gambling. I mean, come on.
He's playing young players now, dude. I've never seen this before. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, he is second in the table, so I can't really. It's Juventus just have a way of finding their way to the top of the table, but yeah, Inter looks strong. Inter don't look like they're turning back. It's really just like battles for like third in the league right now. That's kind of what it's looking like, because Juventus is looking strong, vulnerable but strong. And yeah, Roma. I think the De Rossi experiment could work, but they need to prove it to me by beating some quality teams over the bottom teams. Yeah, those bottom teams give top teams trouble, but they're sneaking out points here or there. But collectively, like, if you want to say you're a top team in the league, you should be beating those teams. So, like, good for them, but they have to do something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fair. Just within SerieA too, right? Like, it's pretty competitive again at the top. We talked about this. This has been the case for the last few years, but 4th to 9th is only separated by 5 points right now. That's a good or a bad month, away from finding yourself in the Champions League or completely out of European competition. So it's still a really tight race, and it's interesting too because obviously. It feels like we just haven't talked about this all that much, and that's because there's so much going on. But there is this extra Champions League spots, available for next year. A lot of that's going to depend on current performances in Europe and getting that coefficient up. Italy do have some teams still alive in European competition. It's not impossible that they could be one of these teams that ends up with 5th spot being Champions League. It's a little more on the unlikely side, but even still, we saw. Italian teams make it to finals last year at every stage of a European competition. I don't know that we're going to see that again, especially in the Champions League, for example. But I don't know that I would have said Inter were going to be in the Champions League final last year either. If you asked me at the very beginning to fill in that bracket, I don't know that I would have Inter there. So there are surprises everywhere, but European placement, I think, is going to be really important and something we'll get into over the next few weeks, and that really matters to these teams. Roma, it's very important that they need to be in Europe. They really need to be in the Champions League financially. Same for Inter. We've talked about some of their financial problems. There's not really a team in Italy, I think, that that is not wanting to secure some funding and make sure that they're back. Talking a little transfers in Italy, I saw this time and I was a little taken aback by it. I was a little sad. Goodbye, Luis Muriel. Out of Serie A, he's been kind of one of the figures of Serie A over the last I don't know, like 5 or 6 years, maybe even beyond that. Honestly,
And
I
that's
think
got to be
even
at least 10. He's been in the league for
well,
long.
he had a little stint in Spain, did he not? I think, but there was like the Udinese days very early on. You know, when he was
Yeah.
like a young.
Wait, where did he go in Spain?
I could have. I could be totally imagining this. I'm gonna look it up now. I could have sworn he ended up at like Sevilla for like a year.
You may be correct.
But I could be 100% wrong on that. But I feel like there was a year that he ended up. But he's going to the MLS.
Granada, then back to
Yeah.
the next season. Sampdoria, Sevilla, for 2 years.
Yeah.
Fiorentina, Atalanta, and now he's on his way to Orlando, to the MLS.
Which is exciting.
Hey, listen, it's not the biggest marquee name, but a very quality European player who is a journeyman, but he, was a bagsman for certain teams. Udinese, one of those. Sampdoria, another one of those. Atalanta, another one. He had spent his longest time at Atalanta, 144 games, 54 goals. I've always been a fan of him. And I think that's really good for a team like Orlando. Bring some top quality, older European talent, but like still the guy can play. I mean,
he's still got some juice, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely he's taking a step back, but he is over 100 goals in Serie A. I mean that's not a.
I think that MLS is a good change of pace for him. I think that it's a league where he may be playing slower, but he'll still be playing at the pace of that league, and you'll still see him have a couple more years of some goal scoring.
He'll be chopping up with the Inter Miami Globetrotters, and they've been touring the world. I don't know if you saw this, but
having a little bit of yerba mate.
Well, I haven't seen. Well, listen, I'm all about the mate life, but Messi had an injury. I'm gonna actually look it up because they did this dumb tour with Inter Miami.
You're talking about the Hong Kong game when they got booed?
Yeah, well, because like Messi's on all the billing.
He
has some kind of injury concern, and they're like touring these guys around. It's like, God Almighty, it's unbelievable.
It's cringy
around.
Yeah, it's cringy
right now. Transfer news again, just a ton of loans or like free agent signings. So Leon Dendoncker goes to Napoli. Interesting signing. He was one of these guys that I think like as a young player like had a lot of hype and potential and never quite filled out, but an interesting like guy that can fill in on the back line, can also play in midfield at times. Kind of depending on how he's fitting in. Angelino is going to Roma. This is a guy that had a lot of hype.
I don't know if it's a good move.
Obviously, like a Manchester City guy, but then ends up going to Leipzig, where he had a really strong season. He was in Turkey this season. Interesting for Roma there. Both of these, the reason I picked these out too is I think Roma and Napoli have both had strange seasons for in some ways the same reasons, but also different reasons. And both of them have obviously moved on from a manager and trying out the transition year and how hard that can be at times. But these are two interesting signings. Angelino, if I had to guess, might be more of like an impactful player than Dendoncker ends up being. But to me, I don't know why I always think of Dendoncker and I'm like, he could have been something, and he just ended up not. Which is fine. He's still he's still playing in like top leagues. It's not like he's had a terrible time, but just something, some names to keep our eyes on.
However, one of the biggest, I guess, highest profile moves that's happened recently. I hate the guy. Love his brother. I hate the guy. Jerome Boateng signs for Salernitana. Salernitana trying to do anything that they can, including signing domestic abusers.
We're gonna listen. Here's what we're gonna do for Salernitana. There's a guy with a questionable past coming from Bayern Munich, and he's clearly washed. We're gonna take a look. We're gonna see what's under the hood, and
I can't wait to see Giroud just work him, let alone Rafael Leao run circles around him. It's about to be Messi putting him on the ground 2.0 by somebody in the league, dude.
His hips are and hamstrings are about as flexible as a Triscuit. So yeah,
Dybala's about to make him pop a hip flexor, dude. It's not gonna be good.
It's a frozen Tupperware, away from under a car tire, just ready to explode.
Vlahovic is about to body him, dude.
If Vlahovic gets you with the agility, it might really be time to hang it up because that guy,
Lukaku,
battleship. Lukaku is more agile and twinkle toes than Vlahovic. I got to be honest, and I'm a Vlahovic. I like him, but man, he does not have that. Oof. So yeah, I mean it's interesting. Salernitana obviously in like a pretty desperate position. At the bottom of the table, they're just looking for answers. They're looking for help. It's very obvious that Jerome Boateng does not have what he used to have, not even close. But he's been sort of offering himself to just about any team in Europe that will pick up a phone. And the fact that he ends up at the team at the bottom of the table in Serie A, I think tells you about where he is as a player at the moment. But he's a big enough name that I think worth mentioning. And obviously, he does have a bad past, and that was also part of the reason I think teams were willing to stay away. And so it's going to be interesting. Salernitana have done a great escape before. This does take away, I think, some of the feel-good factor if they do, because it's a little hard to root for someone like Jerome Boateng. But someone who's not so hard to root for, someone that I've always found myself really liking. I can't even quite explain why, but Andrea Bellotti joins Fiorentina on loan from Roma.
Downgrade?
Outside of money laundering, I'm not sure I understand this move. Bellotti is over the last few seasons has really fallen off as a goal scorer. He still does offer some things, but has not been someone that is reliably scoring goals for you. And Roma, though, at the same time aren't very deep in that position. Fiorentina do have some options, but again, it's just kind of strange. It's a strange lateral move that I'm not totally sure I understand at the moment, and maybe I just don't have enough clarity in the situation. But
I've always liked favor at Roma. Gallo's getting older. He's not performing consistently enough.
He's got injury problems.
That's why I love the guy too, but
it's just a strange move. It feels like, if you're going to see him take a loan move to just maybe try and get more playing time or something, it would have been to someone a little, like a Genoa, or something like back to Torino even. Just, I don't know. It's just kind of it's a strange landing spot to me. But I mean,
to be honest, well, I don't know how Roma would feel about it, but they obviously wouldn't loan him to a rival that's above them on the table. A team like Milan that needs a striker. This could have been an easy loan move for them to put together, right? A guy like Bellotti to come in and kind of play that main number 9 guy behind Giroud, come off the bench, get some playing time. But they've got Luka Jovic as well, who's been playing well. So they're not gonna. Roma's not gonna loan him there. He's not going to Juventus. He's not going to Inter. He's not going to Atalanta. I mean, you know what I mean? I think that the teams you named were the most probable. I don't think that his stock is really high anywhere outside of Italy. It could have been one of those moves where he signs for someplace in Turkey, but he didn't want to do that.
He does. He does feel Turkish. Does feel like a Turkish club to me.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I don't know. Hopefully he can get it going. But yeah, I think those glory days are over. I was praying for him to join Milan in 2016. I'm talking a long time ago. We gotta check ourselves, man.
He did have a really big come up, and there was a lot of talk with him with Premier League teams. There was a 60 million price on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 60 million today is not what it was then. 60 million is
60 million back then was big.
That's 100 million today. Honestly, it's he was someone that had a lot of hype, and deservedly so too. He was bagging a lot of goals, so it's not it was for nothing. But let's look ahead to the weekend that we have coming up. In Italy, we have some good ones, like we mentioned. Roma versus Inter, another kind of hurdle for Inter to cross, and like we mentioned, Roma has been in better form, and might be able to find a result here. As far as England goes, we do have Aston Villa versus Manchester United and Arsenal versus West Ham. Those happening on Sunday morning. Two pretty important games, and you've got Milan versus Napoli on Sunday. Big one in Italy.
Big game.
Milan, I think, a little quietly too, have been performing better, and have stabilized. They're just kind of they're like the stepchild of the top part of Italy, because they're not really challenging for the title, but they're not really in any kind of crisis either. There's not much of a story to tell there just at the moment. It's not like you have so many other clubs. You have Roma obviously losing Mourinho and Napoli melting down and stuff. Like Lazio struggling this year. Milan have just been kind of like fine.
It's kind of overtaken all that like Pioli out drama that you really only see if you really follow a lot of like Milan accounts online. That's the only way you're seeing it. They're just it's weird. They're 10 points above fourth, and what is that? 4 points below second. So they're just in limbo. They're just focused on making sure they can maintain that lead over Atalanta, so things don't crash and burn. Like the key is get to Champions League next year, because we see the lead that Inter has, and we see that Juventus is kind of staying up there. It's really hard to kind of get caught up with that. But who knows? There could be a swing. But yeah, it's just all about staying in Champions League. Yo, how about De Ketelaere at Atalanta? The guy's been having a hell of a season this year.
Yeah, we maybe haven't given him enough credit. Just how good he's looked. Part of it was like Milan. There was a big expectation, and it never felt like they had. Atalanta's obviously too. I think a good environment for a young player to find their way. We've talked about how even someone like Scamacca has gone back there and had a good season despite having some rough times in England. So it's not too shocking to me. It's more about he stays in Atalanta for at least one more year, and then tries a big move again or something. And that's where it did feel like a move that was maybe a little too soon in his career, which happens. He
also played him out of position.
Yeah, there was that. I think he never, but I also think he never looked good in any position he played. Which I think was. But again, that happens with young guys. It's not always a perfect development growth. I always think about Mohamed Salah and that. He looked out of place, out of touch. Goes to Italy, figures it out a little bit, and even then, was not even close to what he became at Liverpool. Which is one of the world's best players. It just never really seemed it was going to happen. So, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Champions League is back next week. Nothing crazy. You got Leipzig, Real Madrid. I don't know. PSG for Sociedad could be interesting. PSG have had a habit, I think, of throwing away some ties there, but hard to imagine them.
Who did Bayern play?
Bayern played Lazio.
Lazio, right?
They should really be cruising through that if we're being realistic. I know exactly why you're asking that question. You freak.
I'm a Bayern fan for the Champions League this year.
Yes, and me. That's all we got. Dom, anything to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, Mia San Mia. Let's go Bayern. Joshua Kimmich, 94 rated by May. Let's get it.
Which Bayern logo is your favorite, and why is the one from 1933 to 1945? Dom? Why is that?
Let's not go there, Matt. Don't do this to me. That's the equivalent of saying I'm a Lazio fan. All right, now we need to.
Well, there's some kindred spirits happening. I'm sure the discussions outside the stadium between both sets of fans would be very, very kind, orderly, and thoughtful.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you could have just made fun of the fact I'm a fan of a team in Italy that had its rival break off with them because they weren't being inclusive enough. But
not international enough. So
you missed your shot there. Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Harry8FUT. And if you're ever feeling like you need something to take your time off your hands, aside from listening to us and rating us 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform, go pick up Pal World. Thick game. It's Pokemon with guns, dude. It's sick.
The internet was a mistake. I'm starting to think. That. Starting to think we went one too far.
We start out with dramatic chipmunk, and now we end up with
that's
running a sweatshop of fake knockoff Pokemon so that they can make you guns on an assembly line.
In some way, it all kind of makes sense that we ended up here. I think we are reaping what we've sown, and that is fair enough. We'll be back next week talking about everything that happened this weekend, maybe recapping if anything interesting happens in the Champions League. Until then, enjoy the games, and we'll see you next time.